You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 AM, a CBS station.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. You're listening to us on CBS radio station 1580 AM in the Washington, D.C. area, or you're streaming us on the web, WMCLive.com, and that's where you can also find links to podcasts of all our previous shows. And I want to hear from you. Tweet hashtag WMC Live, or you can email me at womensmediacenterlive@gmail.com. On today's show, we talk with an expert on gender and the fields of science and engineering. We also get an analysis of what the Supreme Court's decision on DOMA, the Defense of Marriage Act, will mean. We venture into combat with a war correspondent, and we peer inside the phenomenon that is Wikipedia to find, surprise, sexism, and the woman who has arrived to fix it. But first, let's look inside the headlines. There's two items this week inside the headlines. One is congratulations to both the women's movement and Facebook. Yep, Facebook. Because of the women's movement's complaints and organizing, Facebook and women have come to an agreement about how to get hate speech down, as well as sites like the Rape Dungeon and beheading women on video. Unbelievable things. They wanted to get them down, but their monitors simply didn't have the training to recognize sexism when they saw it. Most of their monitors are young white males. It's testosterone time. So now the agreement includes a special way for people to complain about sites, for women to complain. That's being set up. It'll take a little while to get going, but it is being set up, and for women to consult over the training that will be given to monitors. This is a huge win-win on all sides. The other gladdening moment, two happy inside the headlines items, wow, is the sight of 7 women in the Senate Armed Services Committee facing down all the military brass this past week in the hearings about sexual assault in the military. The Joint Chiefs were there, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs were there, all the top 5-star and 12-star and 55-star generals. You could go blind from squinting at the brass. And the women were not only not intimidated, they really showed what spunk and beyond spunk grit and most of all dignity and power can do. And it's interesting because we've said all along, tokens don't cut it. It's when you begin to get critical mass that makes the difference. And this began to show that. Currently, a record 20 female senators are playing roles on the most powerful committees. Of the 4 most prestigious Senate panels, Appropriations, Armed Services, Finance, and Foreign Relations, women now hold 18 spots. That's an increase of almost 65% over the last decade. But it's particularly on the Senate Armed Service Committee that it just gladdens your heart. There is a bill, of course, there's a number of bills, but the one that's most important is the one from Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, Democrat of New York. Oh boy, wow, did she take apart a general or two. This is the bill that would take prosecution of sexual assault out of the hands of a company commander who may be extremely prone to pardoning the assaulter, and put the prosecutions in the hands of experienced, trained military prosecutors. This law, by the way, was I wouldn't say co-written, but helping hands and voices in this law were the women at SWAN, Service Women's Action Network. So you know that it is kosher. Claire McCaskill was wonderful also. She, out of her mouth came things that the women's movement has been saying for 40 years and that were poo-pooed for the first 20. For example, she said, "This is not about sex," General, addressing one of the brassy guys. "This is about power. Rape has nothing to do with sex. It has to do with domination, conquest, and power." Women have begun to challenge many of the assumptions, if not all, when they are sitting on House and Senate committees. And this is Republican women as well as Democratic women. It goes way back to when there were the first women in the military, parallel to the first women in the Senate. The very first woman on that committee, Armed Services, was Margaret Chase Smith. She was a liberal Maine Republican from Maine. She served in both the House and the Senate in about 50, 60 years ago. And during her House career, she crusaded for sexual equality in the military. And that she is the reason that military women today get veterans benefits, which the male senators, it just hadn't occurred to them. So this is really important. Of course, there are more women being sought even for the armed services because they were needed after 1973 when the draft ended and created a need for women. But the changes reflect those on the committee. In 2001, women made up 10% of the committee, compared with nearly 30% today. More critical mass makes all the difference. And now to our first guest. Veronica Arreola is the Assistant Director of the Center for Research on Women and Gender and the Director of the Women in Science and Engineering program at the University of Illinois, Chicago. She's also written widely on the importance of women's sports. Welcome, Veronica. Welcome to Women's Media Center Live.
Oh, thank you for having me on.
Well, you are, among other things, the director of the Women in Science and Engineering program at the University of Illinois at Chicago. Pretty much every feminist preoccupation at this point is that we've got to get more women in STEM, in science, technology, engineering, and math. Talk about the status that you're seeing of women. Is it growing? What can we do to make it grow in those fields?
The status really ranges because STEM is such a wide field, science, technology, engineering, and math. Yeah. So we have been seeing a lot of growth in terms of women going into biology, chemistry, biomedicine, health science fields. But we're still seeing a bit of a plateau and struggle in terms of getting women to enter electrical engineering, computer science, mechanical engineering.
Yeah, it worries me particularly in terms of computer science because that is clearly growing at an exponential rate, and if we're left out of that the way we were out of the Industrial Revolution, it will take us more than 100 years to catch up, if ever.
Yeah, definitely. And not only just catching up, but just losing out on our brain power, our problem solving, the way that we look at the world, and we may create solutions that honestly sometimes men don't see just because women go about the world in a different manner. Right.
I had as a guest on the show folks from Black Girls Code, and coming up a guest from teaching girls to code. So obviously there are women on the case of demystifying the world of coding and computers as boys' magic for a little girl, so that if female people grow up familiar with it, that's one way in. What more can we or should we be doing to encourage women to go into the fields where we're plateauing?
We do need to have more women coding, but there are women coding as well. So we need to work on our messaging, the idea that there are women coding, there are women computer scientists, there are women engineers, and just really talk about them more, highlight them more, and encourage our girls to go into those areas, not so much saying you need to be a mechanical engineer, but if somebody finds their daughter breaking something at home, maybe not jump right at her about breaking something. Ask her, what were you doing? She may be breaking something apart to try and put it back together. That is really what classically boys have done in terms of engineering. I hear these stories from men all the time. I took apart my alarm clock. I took apart my toaster, and I got yelled at. But you know what? I spent another 2 weeks trying to put it back together so it would work again. And then they go into engineering. That's the kind of problem solving and tinkering that boys have done constantly over the years, and sure they might get yelled at, but they're not so much discouraged from that. And we need to encourage our girls to do more tinkering.
Okay, tinker. I think that's kind of wonderful that tinker should be the should be the rallying cry for girls in the 21st century.
Definitely.
Tinker, very militantly. Tinker,
tinker, and highlight these sorts of these careers, as well as highlight the importance to humanity.
Yeah.
There really is a sense that girls want to go into careers that are helpful, that will help people, and we just don't see how
engineering
how engineering helps people.
Right,
and
of
yet,
course.
We have bridges falling apart in our country, and that's very helpful if we can have some women on the case to help us redesign those bridges.
You bet.
Redesign better levees in New Orleans, design how we're going to rebuild the East Coast to withstand increased hurricanes. Right.
It occurs to me, just as you were talking, that the taking of things apart, the tinkering, even if it gets you into trouble, is somehow connected with the freedom to fail, which little boys are encouraged to have more than little girls, and then we grow up, wanting to be perfect. So somewhere it's all connected.
Most definitely. AAUW had a report out a few years ago called Why So Few, and a key part of it is asking parents to really applaud the struggle. Mm-hmm. We too often applaud our children, and I have a 9-year-old, so I am as guilty as others, of applauding an A, applauding something that's been completed successfully, as opposed to, you worked really hard, and that is the hardest B you have ever earned.
Right.
I'm so proud of you.
Oh, that's good.
That is what we need to encourage.
That's really an interesting thing to hang on to, and it also has to do with the means are the point, not the ends.
Exactly.
Now, talk to us a little bit about the Center for Research on Women and Gender, where you're the assistant director, in addition to the work that you do as director of the program.
My whole job is the WISE program, of the Women in Science Engineering at the center. So the Women in Science Engineering is a program of the center, and so it's a little bit confusing. That's my official role. But at the center, we are an interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary center on women and gender. A bulk of our work is actually in women's health field. Mm. So our director, my boss, Dr. Stacy Geller, actually does a lot of international women's work. So she's been working with women in Ghana and New Zealand, in rural parts of these countries, India.
Yes, I know her name.
On reducing postpartum mortality, essentially saving women's lives during childbirth, because these are the women who are bringing children into the world in the rural parts of our world, with lay midwives, health. The old woman in the village who knows how to birth women, birth babies, those sorts of things. So she's going around doing research, training, working with governments so that we can reduce the number of women who die in childbirth.
Yeah. It's good work that you're doing there at the program and on all fronts.
Yes, definitely. And we're working here in Illinois to work with women in the southern part of our state to reduce their cardiovascular disease risk. So we're all over the place. You're
thinking globally and acting locally and globally.
Yes, definitely.
We've only got about another minute to go, but I would love to squeeze in something about your interesting, really terrific writing on women in sports and your pledge. Talk about your pledge.
Yeah, so I have a Facebook page called I Pledge to Attend a Women's Sporting Event this year. I have been really frustrated with the lack of women, especially feminists, who talk about the importance of Title IX in women's sports, who are not going out to sporting events. Mm-hmm. So I have this page that's being run by myself, as well as Jessica Luther, who has her own sports page a site called Power Forward, and the talented Anna Clark from AnnaClark.net. I'm sure we've read other things from her. But really encouraging people to go out, go to a game, enjoy it. Whether you're a sports friend or not, I think you will enjoy them because it is a pot of girl power. If you go out to a National Women's Soccer League game, a WNBA game, you will see a ton of little girls screaming for the women who are playing. I mean, you can't get a bigger estrogen high than going to a WNBA game and seeing dads. That was one of the things that I love the most, is going to see the dads who are bringing their daughters to enjoy a game that they have loved and sharing that love with their daughters.
That's a change.
Yeah, and they're really affordable. And also, people need to be bugging their their newspapers about making sure that WNBA scores are in them. And their NPR stations, all their radio stations say, hey, what was the score last night? You need to be reporting that.
It sounds like an excellent idea. Thank you so much, Veronica, for everything that you do and for being with us on Women's Media Center Live.
Not a problem. Thank you so much for having me.
We have to take a short break here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and I will be right back with a conversation about what the Supremes, the ones in black robes, will decide about the Defense of Marriage Act, DOMA for short. So don't go away. After Hurricane Sandy, parts of the East Coast have returned to normal, but others won't see normal again for quite some time. One group getting volunteers and aid supplies to those who need it is called Occupy Sandy. Made up of a coalition of Occupy Wall Street activists, community organizers, and technologists, Occupy Sandy is using social media and other software tools to identify and quickly respond to urgent needs among the hardest-hit communities. You can help. To donate or to volunteer, visit occupysandy.org.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 AM, a CBS station.
And we're back with E.J. Graff, contributing editor and daily columnist at the American Prospect, covering a wide beat that ranges from international subjects through investigative reporting and social justice issues. She's won numerous awards, and she is the author of What is Marriage For? The Strange Social History of Our Most Intimate Institution. Welcome, EJ, to Women's Media Center Live.
It's such an honor to be here.
Well, you're a really wonderful writer.
Well, I can't tell you how much that means to me hearing it from you, really.
Well, I want to go to the issue at hand here, because which is the decision coming down from the Supremes on DOMA, Defense of Marriage Act. You are the author of a really intelligent book called What is Marriage For? The Strange Social History of Our Most Intimate Institution, which Beacon brought out in 99 and then again in 2004. And you've written in your blog posts and in your column for the American Prospect, you've written about the subject as well. What do you think the court's going to do? Do you have a take?
Yes, I think everybody believes that they are going to strike down DOMA Section 3, the section that says the federal government has the right to pick and choose which state marriages it's going to recognize. DOMA, Section 1 says, for federal purposes, marriage is between a man and a woman. And it says for marriage is between a man and woman, and then Section 3 says that's the only kind that the federal government will recognize. And of course, there was really no chance of challenging that in an intelligent way until there were states that had marriage laws for same-sex couples. So there have been several challenges accumulating since we've had states that did. And on several grounds, it's hard to see how this Supreme Court could uphold that. They not because they are going to impose marriage equality on the entire country, but because it's hard to see how Justice Kennedy could say the federal government has the right to refuse to recognize a state's lawfully conducted marriage. then historically, marriage law and marriage rules and regulations have always been left to the states under the 10th Amendment, and the federal government simply recognizes whatever marriage the state makes for the purpose of federal law if there's a regulation passed by the government that hinges on marriage, so security or whatever, immigration, whatever it might be. So Kennedy has written the past two broad, sweeping, beautiful pro-gay rights opinions, and this one is once again both in his libertarian sweet spot, why shouldn't people be free to marry who they want to, and also in his federalism sweet spot. How could the federal government take over a power from the states?
And wasn't it Kennedy who made some comment during the arguments about what do we do about the children? It's hard for children to say why my parents aren't married. They get teased by other kids. Suddenly there was a concern about the children. I thought, that's interesting.
It was very interesting. It was a very interesting moment. I think that was during the Prop 8 argument. They had 2 days of argument. Prop 8 is the case that the advocates have not liked as much.
Right.
It's the celebrity case. It's the Boys and Olson case, but it's about whether California voters had the right to rescind their state Supreme Court decision that extended marriage equality in California.
Yes, that's right. Right, of course.
And everybody I know has been nervous about that case going to the Supreme Court. They wanted it just not to hear it until let the Ninth Circuit decision stand, because then California would have marriage equality, and nothing would change in the rest of the country. We're just really not ready for a broad ruling.
Yeah,
and it did sound like they were going to kick Prop 8 back to the lower courts. It did. Yeah. They were going to decide on, whether or not the plaintiffs had the right to be in court at all, whether, standing, or some other reason. But Defense of Marriage Act, I think everybody came away counting at least 5 and possibly even 6 votes to strike Section 3.
Right.
So what that would mean is that right now I'm married in the state of Massachusetts. There are, I have lost count, it might be 11 states that perform same-sex marriages under their laws. So the question is, am I married just in Massachusetts, or am I also married in the United States? And we're really counting the moments until we are also married in the United States, because there's some tax consequences that are really problematic for us.
Sure. It is going to be a really anxiety-provoking session of the court this time around, because there's so much on the docket. I mean, that it is really major decisions that are coming down in addition to DOMA.
The federal government is not in charge of whether or not states marry same-sex couples, right? Individual states make their own marriage laws. And generally, they give each other's marriages what they call in constitutional law full faith and credit. So if you got married in Virginia, you're still
recognized.
California.
Right, you're recognized, yeah.
Right. So right now, 39 states, I believe, have laws that say that my marriage is not recognized in those states. And they have various levels of intensity. But I don't think anyone expects, and I know the advocates certainly do not hope, that the Supreme Court is going to invalidate all of those state DOMAs.
But isn't it a matter of, I mean, yes, it's a states' rights, you should excuse the phrase, issue on legislating who can marry and so forth. But isn't it also a civil rights issue that the government can write in on the way it did on civil rights in terms of race?
Well, yes. That's what's up for grabs in the Prop 8 case. That's not on offer in the DOMA case. The advocates all want Section 3 of DOMA struck down.
Right.
Because what that means is that progress can continue.
Yes.
And, I mean, we've had, how many? Half a dozen just in the past year that have chosen to marry same-sex couples. Mm-hmm. We have several in the queue that people think will join soon. Oregon, California, possibly Illinois, although they just lost the chance to do it this session.
But it's clearly an idea whose time has come.
It's going to continue moving. It'll take a lot of work in some states, and what the strategy is that we win marriage in a majority of the states that way by, in some cases, going back to the ballot, in some cases persuading the legislature over the next 5 to 10 years. And at that point, we go to the Supreme Court and say now it's time for Loving v. Virginia. Because the Supreme Court doesn't like to overrule most of the country. They like to sweep the remaining southern states into line.
I'm awfully glad you're on the case. Thank you so much for being with us today, EJ. And go back and make your next deadline, because we want to read you also. And now it's time for the Surrealism Corner. There are 2 absurd items in the corner today. One from that part of the globe that reliably gives us continually items for the Surrealism Corner, that area known as the Middle East. So Kuwait, where women really got the vote only very recently, has made an interesting statement about Saudi Arabia, where, of course, nobody has the vote. The Kuwaiti government announced that the traffic system in Kuwait would no longer grant driving licenses, to Saudi women unless they had the consent of their guardians. Now, you may remember that in Saudi Arabia, an adult woman is still considered a permanent minor. She can't get a job. She can't leave the country. She can't drive. She can't drive even with permission, but she can't do those other things or travel or sign up for an education without the permission written of a male guardian. And if there's no adult male guardian, that male guardian might be her younger brother or even sometimes her son. Okay, so now Kuwait, which is supposedly more, quote, liberated, everything in heavy air quotes, has announced that they will be respecting that because, quote, Saudi women wishing to obtain a driver's license in Kuwait must have the consent of their guardian. This goes for all Saudi women, young or old, single or married, because there are reservations on the issue of Saudi women driving in their own country, and their guardians do not agree to them driving. In light of this, we refuse to grant driver's license, etc. This is absurd and a collusion of the Brotherhood. The other item, bring it right back home, is a Native American student, 17-year-old Chelsea Raymer, who is a member of the Poarch Creek Band of Indians, wanted to wear a feather from her people while taking part in the graduation ceremony at Escambia Academy High School in, unfortunately, Alabama. And she was told she shouldn't. She wore it anyway, and now they are refusing to give her her diploma and to graduate her. This is crazy, crazy stuff. I mean, it's a feather, people. Of course, Chelsea Raymer could always leave Alabama and leave the country and go traveling. She might even wind up in Kuwait, where, like in Saudi Arabia, she would not be permitted to drive or have a guardian. It's a really lovely world for women. But it's interesting how consistent the patriarchy is, whether it's feathers or driving, whether it's Kuwait or Alabama. It is, however, for us, break time again. This is Women's Media Center Live, and you guessed it, I'm still Robin Morgan. When we come back, we'll talk with a woman who risks her life for her job, which takes her to the front lines of war, to get that story, to shoot that photo worth 1,000 words. Heidi Levine.
When it comes to talk radio, men still do most of the talking. It doesn't get too much better if you look at television, newspapers, film, video games, social media, literature, sports, and corporate or technology leadership. The Women's Media Center's Status of Women in the U.S. Media 2013 report details the persistent gender disparity in a range of media institutions that rank among the greatest influencers in American society. To read the full report, go to womensmediacenter.com.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 AM, a CBS station.
Welcome back. Heidi Levine is an American photographer. She started her career with the Associated Press in Israel in 1983, and that intended one-year experience turned into more than half a lifetime spent focusing on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. In 1991, she joined the French-based photo agency SIPA Press, and her photographs and her reporting you've seen and read in such international magazines as Der Stern, Paris Match, Newsweek, Time, New York Times, Sunday Magazine, etc. Her recent assignments have had her covering revolutions in Libya and Egypt, as well as Jordan, Sweden, Syria, Iraq, Kosovo, Afghanistan, Georgia, and Saudi Arabia. Her awards and exhibitions are simply too numerous to list here. Welcome, Heidi, to Women's Media Center Live. It's good to have you here all the way from Israel, right? That's where you are now?
Yes, that's right.
You are still a rarity. You are a war photographer, and you've spoken out about what it's like to be a woman journalist in the field. You've been in Syria, Libya, Egypt. You were in Kosovo. You were in Libya at the height of the uprising in the Arab Spring. Give us some insights into what it is like to be a woman in that circumstance, or do you function now primarily as a photographer?
I do function primarily as a photographer, although there are fewer female photographers in war zones compared to males. I would say I definitely try to perform equally. I think that a lot of my male colleagues regard me as a photographer who has a lot of guts to be on the front line. I try to be cautious when I can, and
the touching thing to me is that although you've won many prizes for your photography, and I've seen some of the photographs, and they're searing. There's an absolutely unrelenting eye of truth in that lens, but nonetheless, you speak of still being able to cry, and that some of the men. The male war correspondents now cry too. That's a change, isn't it, from the earlier days?
It is a change. I know that because I was married to a photographer who was 20 years my senior, and so he's from a generation where you had to hide what you saw affected you, what you witnessed. Correspondents and photographers turned more to alcohol and to prescription drugs or drugs and depression quite commonly. And although I think the changes that news organizations and our bosses are really trying to encourage us to discuss, what we see and how we feel. We don't really have to hide it the same way as we hid it before. And I have no shame in crying. I think I don't think I can witness a funeral or photograph a funeral without crying. And if it comes to a time where I don't feel that emotion in myself, then maybe then I shouldn't do what I'm doing, because I really feel that my emotions is what drives me to do what I do.
Yes. It's very different, I think, from the image of the war correspondent as the toughened, feel-nothing, alcoholic, chain-smoking, macho guy. so the days of them asking, she's a reporter, but what is she wearing are over. But there's one photograph in particular that I remember seeing of yours, which is, and I've now forgotten which site of atrocities it was at. The body's covered with lime. That was where?
That was outside of Tripoli.
That was outside of Tripoli, yeah. Where you also were wounded when a truck ran full tilt at you.
Well, actually, that was I was run over by a rebel truck during shelling on the outskirts of Benghazi on my first trip. But the picture of the bodies covered in lime was on my second trip. Outside of Tripoli.
And while doing this for 20 years, you've had and raised 3 children. I mean, grown children. How do you balance that? Women are concerned about work life when they go to work in an office. This is a mission. This is that you're on. This is an art. This is a vocation.
Looking back, I'm sure. I probably could have been a better mother. I've tried to do the best I can. I always try to stay in touch with my kids when I'm in a war zone. When I did go to Libya, I actually lied to one of my kids and said I was just going to be on the border of Egypt with the refugees, because my kids are really, unfortunately, know too much about conflict from growing up in the Middle East, and very well aware of the danger, and they also know that their mother, and my daughter just wrote her first university essay about me, her mother, the war photographer. So I felt for her emotional well-being, it was better to lie. It was difficult. I had to hide myself on Facebook. I had to. In the end, she knew where I was. And, for example, I was just in the Bekaa Valley of Lebanon doing a story on Syrian refugees, and I got a message on Viber that my daughter was asking me how to make a lasagna. So I stopped the car and I gave her the recipe. You buy 2 cans of crushed tomatoes with basil and garlic, and add this and add that. And look, it's not easy to balance, and I'm sure I've made a lot of mistakes, and I know that my kids, for a long time when they were younger and not really old enough to really understand the conflicts, and in particular the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, they felt that the conflict stole their mother, which made it difficult for them to really understand the conflict from both sides, because they were a bit shaded, and these are the people that, make my mother come home late, or can't read the book to me because she has to send her pictures on her computer. I mean, my son still remembers the first computer I got because he felt his life changed. I mean, digital photography has also made it harder on us because it's just never ending. We're always working. I think it definitely does take a bit of multitasking, and I think I think women in general have to multitask a bit more than their male colleagues.
I think we invented it. I swear.
You're right. And today, my first day home, while I was washing the floors and trying to clean the house and wanting to work at the same time, I said, well, who invented woman's lib?
Yes, well, there you go.
Because we just have more to do.
Your work is incredibly valuable, incredibly dangerous, but it is a truth teller that goes where even words don't go. I'm a word person, and so I'm madly in love with words, but words need translating, and your images don't. Thank you for being with us today, Heidi.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much.
And we've got to pause for another brief break. This is still Women's Media Center Live, and I am persistently, stubbornly Robin Morgan. Have you ever wondered why Wikipedia, the world's largest encyclopedia, seems skewed toward covering and being written and edited by a small human minority, white males? We'll be right back with the answer.
Want to stay informed when there are changes to Social Security? Subscribe to receive automatic email updates on popular Social Security web pages with the click of a button. Just visit www.socialsecurity.gov/GOV delivery. More than 1 million people already receive updates to the pages they're most interested in. You can too. Look for the red envelope followed by a link that says Get Email Updates. To learn more, visit www.socialsecurity.gov/GOV delivery. Social Security delivers.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 AM, a CBS station.
And we're back again, this time with Sarah Stierch, who has, during 7 years as a volunteer Wikipedian, logged more than 75,000 Wikipedia edits, including 400 article entries. About 60% of the edits are gender-related. Wikipedia shares the young white male culture of the web, and its bias shows. This is important because the Global Encyclopedia has approximately 500 million visitors a month. More than 1.5 million people, about 80% men, have contributed to Wikipedia's 2.3 million articles. But now, Sarah Stierch is officially on board to make visible the majority of humanity, women. Welcome, Sarah, to Women's Media Center Live.
Thank you for having me.
Well, in fairness to Wikipedia, is hardly alone in having a kind of that youthful, pale male ethos of the web, a kind of culture of testosterone and IT. Certainly Wikipedia is not alone in that, but since it is a font of knowledge, it hurts my heart that are there still only about 13% of its English-speaking editors and contributors women?
Yeah, we're still waiting for the results from our newest editor survey, so I don't know the details on what last year's survey was about. But the previous year, so let's say 2011, the average gendered contributors, women-wise to Wikipedia, approximately 13%. And that does vary. It fluctuates between 9 and 13 depending on the language. We have 240 different language Wikipedias, English being the most popular. And it also depends,
where are women where are women best represented? Do we know that? In which language? That would be interesting.
I believe it's English.
Oh, I see.
We are the largest, and societal norms versus Russian Wikipedia versus English Wikipedia. In the top 10 most popular Wikipedias, Russian Wikipedia, as far as we know, has the smallest gender gap. Or the largest gender gap, I'm sorry.
See.
But, regardless, we have a gender gap. And when your mission is to provide the world, the entire human race, with the sum of all the world's knowledge for free, and only 9 to 13% of half the population is providing that knowledge, you have a major systemic bias.
You certainly do. And in fact, it's slightly, if we're going to be totally accurate, more than half the population. We're not a minority group, as you know. We're the majority of the human species, and the majority of almost every country, certainly including the United States. I think. And
of course, that includes people who walk the line of gender and queerness and so forth. We have a very healthy gay male population on Wikipedia, who's very out and proud and very comfortable generally, who've also been victims of some issues and homophobia in the community, but we lack in strong women leaders in any regard.
So you are going to be the sort of ombudswoman, are you? Or the person who will devise different systems so that I mean, I know it's been solved sort of now, but there was the great flapdoodle over as an American writer who happens to be a woman, this definitely did not make my heart race faster, except from adrenaline. But the flap over migrating women from the category of American novelists to American women novelists, which made Joyce Carol Oates pretty cranky. So that the implication is that American novelists generically are male, and then there's a subcategory of girls. And I know that that's been remedied, but what do we do to change the ethos? I mean, you're one smart woman there. I don't envy. Although I'm very glad that you are there, I don't envy the work you've got ahead of you.
There's a lot of women who are doing what I'm doing. I mean, so with, like, in regards to the situation with the categories, the majority of the people editing Wikipedia are males, let alone, Anglo, well-educated, our average editor is a well-educated 30-something single white male. Yeah. And so Wikipedia, despite it's anyone can edit it, so anyone can contribute to it, anyone can edit it, and at the same time, it's an entire crowdsourced community. So even the policies we have are written by the people. Anybody, you can contribute to the argument about what kind of policies we should have, or what the photograph should be on an article about pregnancy. We had a 6-month-long argument about if it should be a naked pregnant woman who's kind of sexy and has makeup and was like a model, or if it should be a clothed pregnant woman who is African American, casual, looks like the everyday woman. And it was a battle. And the majority of the people arguing about that, men. So one of the most important, and so when this category situation is taking place, now we're arguing, we, quote unquote, the community is discussing to build consensus on if we should have gendered categories, if women novelists should exist. When some of us believe maybe it should, for women's studies' sake. It's kind of nice to have everybody in one group, as long as we're not being cut out of the other group, the main group.
Yes, well, I was just going to say, what about both and instead of either or?
Yeah, which is what I try to do. I try to add everybody to every category. And it's usually things just used by Wikipedians. The public generally doesn't use the category schema that we have. Right. But it's critical that women click the talk page when they're interested in a subject. So women novelists, pregnancy, the subjects that are the hardest and have the least women's voices in it are the subjects that are still being dominated in society today and by males who are trying to, who are basically like abortion. That's one of the most contested subjects on Wikipedia.
And men are
the majority of the voices in it.
You're kidding. They're men.
No. Pro-choice, pro-life.
Oh, I see.
What should it be called? What should it be called? Pro-choice, or should it be called pro-abortion? Blah 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 blah.
Right.
And these arguments are men taking place, as it has been through the majority.
So it's the best thing people can do to support you, women, is become volunteer editors and part of the Wikipedia community. In other words,
absolutely.
This is a call. Hear this, listeners. It's up to us. You've been quoted with a very interesting, I think, and true, partly, statement about why fewer women seem to contribute than do men. That women don't like argumentation and debate, at least not in a nasty way. The geekiness that can prevail at Wikipedia, that women don't seem to write as long entries as men do.
That was taken out of context. That's not.
Well, we're multitasking. We're doing, and which leads us to your last point, that many have lives involving children and other demands. And I would add another one, which came up in a conversation with Gail Collins, the columnist, wonderful columnist at the New York Times, in which she said, women need to start writing more op-eds. The vast majority of op-eds are written by men, and part of it is that you have to respond fairly quickly, and the women have this problem, which is that we like to think before we.
God forbid, we like to make good decisions.
Yeah, God forbid. Whereas men, when men think, that made me angry or that made me glad, I don't have time to reason through it. But I've got I don't know anything about that, but that doesn't stop me from having an opinion. So.
And I'm also a strong believer that women, and of course, not every woman falls into this category. These categories or these assumptions, but that women also like to be invited. I don't crash parties. the movie Party Crashers wasn't written about me.
Right.
None of my girlfriends either. To say to a woman, I know you're mad as hell. Do you want to write a blog about it?
Right.
Or I know you're really irritated that there aren't a lot of articles about, 20th century, feminist, revolutionary, whatever. Do you want to sit down at my house some night and have a bottle of wine, and maybe I can teach you how to edit Wikipedia, and we can all contribute together?
Is this part of the Wiki Women's Collaborative that you established and the Wikipedia Tea House, which are sort of women-friendly places?
Absolutely. So the Tea House, which was the first project that I co-developed, in 2012, I served as a fellow, or a lady fellow, as I like to call it, at the Wikimedia Foundation, which is the nonprofit that basically supports Wikipedia. Right. When you make a donation to Wikipedia, the money goes to the foundation and gets dispersed appropriately, and et cetera. And I work there now in a different role. But so I developed this project called the Tea House, which stemmed out of a non-scientific survey that I did of over 300 women who edit or used to edit Wikipedia in 2011. And one of their biggest complaints was people are rude and it's hard to find help from people who aren't jerks. Where can we have a place where people just have good manners, which is so hard to find on the internet?
Oh, yeah, I like that.
And I like tea, and I like polite people. And so we created this place. If you go to the search box on Wikipedia and you type WP, Tea House, you'll come to this very pretty, very cool looking environment that's a little different than your usual Wikipedia space. And the surveys that I did have showed that women wanted a more friendly atmosphere to get friendly, polite help without feeling like they're idiots. We made a social component, and we have a question board where you can ask a question and get an instant response within seconds, generally,
my God,
by a Wikipedian from around the world who wants to help you.
Oh, this is fabulous! So it's you just go to the Wikipedia site and you look in the search box, and you type WP Tea House.
WP Tea House, and the majority of the people who contribute or who have been involved in the Tea House, who've asked a question and received help, end up staying to continue editing Wikipedia. The Wiki Women's Collaborative is the second step for that. It's basically inspired by the women's movement, that you have been involved in, and the second wave and the third wave, and
the tsunami together. The tsunami,
yes. And we're on Facebook at the Wiki Women's Collaborative. We're on Twitter at Wiki Women, and women can tweet back and forth. We answer questions on how to edit. And it's usually myself and another feminist editor named Adrienne Wadowitz who run it. And there's a group of women, 10 of us, who run the Facebook page, and you can come by and say hi and join the club. So,
Sarah, this is just terrific, and I want to add really to the women who are listening to this, and spread the word about both the Wiki Women's Collaborative and the Tea House, because they're entry points into getting more women to become editors, which itself changes the tone, the ethos, the content, and we can't blame anybody but ourselves if we're not pushing at those doors.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for being with us today, Sarah, and keep up the good work, because we need it, and we'll get in there and we'll help you.
Thank you, Robin. It was a pleasure.
And now it's time for Fighting Words. Data is just beginning to be collected about the problem of forced marriage in the United States, which is growing. In 2011, the Tahrir Justice Center outside of Washington, D.C. conducted the first national survey on the issue. It received responses from over 500 agencies working with various immigrant, ethnic, and religious communities in 47 states and the territory of Guam. Presumably, this also included the Amish, the Shakers, Appalachia, folks who have been here for a long time, not immigrants. The marriages involved people from 56 countries of various faiths and all ages, though most were female and many were below the age of 18. There's no federal law in the U.S. against forced marriage, and only 9 states and territories have laws criminalizing it: California, the District of Columbia, Maryland, Minnesota, Mississippi, Nevada, Oklahoma, Virginia, and the Virgin Islands. By the way, there's a difference between arranged marriage and forced marriage, which ought to be self-evident. But let's look at some of the key findings of the survey. 2 out of 3 respondents, 67%, felt there were cases of forced marriage not being identified in the populations with which they work. A significant population, in other words, of hidden victims beyond the potentially 3,000 cases identified through the survey, 3,000 that we know of. Also, less than 10% of respondents said they had a working definition of forced marriage at their agency. And less than a quarter of respondents, 22%, said that their agency's screening and referral process enabled them to identify cases where forced marriage may be of concern. Less than a quarter had a referral and screening process. Also, less than 1 in 5 respondents, 16%, said their agency was properly equipped to help individuals facing or fleeing forced marriage. Almost half the respondents, 46%, who provided information on particular tactics used against 67% of respondents, felt that there were cases of forced marriage not only not being identified, but being cases of violence. Victims reporting violence, having been subjected to actual physical violence in forcing the marriage. So it's interesting that the same people who believe in forced marriage, fundamentalist communities, and extremely traditional, hidebound, patriarchal ones, also forbid marriages between same-sex partners. If you happen to be the same gender as the person you want to spend the rest of your life with, that's, of course, forbidden. It's a crazy world. And that's it for this week. You've been listening to us on CBS station 1580 AM radio in Washington, D.C., and on the web at WMClive.com, where you can listen to podcasts of all our previous shows. Remember to email me at womensmediacenterlive@gmail.com. Portions of this program were taped earlier. Views expressed here do not represent the WMC. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. WMC President, and for this program, Executive Producer Julie Burton, Senior Producer Crystal Williams Chancellor, Technical Director Michelle Kinsey Bruns, and our founding sponsor, Regina Kulik Scully. I'm Robin Morgan. Thanks for being with us. Join us next week when we'll look at the conditions faced by restaurant workers, most of whom are women, and what they're doing about it. We'll also talk with a former roller derby skater turned comic writer, and we'll find out just what Women 2.0, Women 2.0, really is. Only here on Women's Media Center Live.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 AM, a CBS station.